native browser storage listener allows you to target activity in the user's browser storage, which includes cookies, local storage, and session storage. And when you target those, the listener can identify when there are changes made to that browser storage information and will push updates into the data layer. A good use case for this would be if you have another application or within your website you set a user ID as a cookie or perhaps in local storage. And when that's set, you want to be able to listen for that and push information about it into the data layer. Another situation might be if you have a custom shopping cart built, and as the user checks out, you store information about their selections in a cookie, then you can tell ListenLayer to target that cookie, listen for activity in that cookie, and push that into the data layer. So obviously the first step in using this is to turn it on, and then you'll want to jump to features and start to enable features. Now our activity features are the ones that actually push information into the data layer. So this first one listens for specific cookies that you care about, and this one listens for local storage, and then this one looks for session storage. It's important to note that once you enable these, each of them correlates to an event here. So anytime one of your targeted native cookies has activity in it, then a native cookie event will be pushed into the data layer. Jumping back over here, we can see what that looks like. There's an event called native cookie, and then we'll include the actual name of the cookie that you've been targeting, or that you've asked us to target, and then information like the contents of the actual cookie. So in this example here, you can see what we've done is we've targeted a Google Analytics ID. And so whenever that's set, it will be pushed into the data layer where it can be captured or used in various ways. Now, in addition to these default events, on the event settings screen is a location where you can actually set the information about the cookies you want to target. So in this case, we're targeting or listening for activity in a local storage key called screen1_VID. It's kind of a user ID feature that we have. And we only want to push data into the data layer when it's set or changed. Whereas down here we have a cookie here, or sorry, local storage that we're targeting called user source first timestamp. So this is a timestamp value that we actually set when the user's traffic source is first known. And in this case, we are going to push this in every single time there's a page loaded. And we've also identified that as a date function. You can see there are some other options, like here we just have a single value. We can have URI encoded or URL encoded information. And that would be useful if, for example, you're using a single cookie or a single field to accumulate information that in URL format or URI encoded format that then needs to be parsed out by our system. So let's jump into the other features. There'll be a learn video that'll be posted on these three activity features, and it'll be the same video, but it'll go into more detail of exactly how to set this up and how to use it. So I'd encourage that you dive into those features first. But in addition to that, as with all of our other listeners, we have some standard features such as custom data layer values, which allows you to write rules that push custom values into the data layer when activity occurs from this listener. We have browser storage, which allows you to take activity from this listener and store it back in the browser. So essentially, you could almost create kind of a browser storage loop. And finally, we have our data layer monitoring, where you can write rules that will notify you when certain data layer activity either occurs or does not occur. And then data layer reporting, which accumulates activity data from this listener from your website and allows you to view reports on that, which is very useful for debugging and other purposes. Now, the reason this is called native browser storage is because it's intended to bridge the gap between what you're building in ListenLayer and what your website might already contain, either because it's been custom built or because you have other applications such as Google Analytics that are generating browser storage data that you would like to utilize inside of ListenLayer. However, it's important to note that this listener can listen for any browser storage activity. So in the case of this user source first timestamp, this is actually browser storage that we are setting and creating inside of ListenLayer. And then this listener is actually able to wait for that, listen for it, identify it, and push it back into the data layer. So it does go beyond just native browser storage, but that's the primary use case. And again, I'd recommend diving into the videos that will be available here on the activity features to get a deeper look at this.